Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here. 2018 is well underway, and the live events are rolling along. I appreciate all the feedback I receive on the episodes of this podcast and the guests that we've had since we launched back in 2011. Podcasting is truly a labor of love. It takes about 2 hours each week to script, prepare, record, and edit each episode, and about another hour to hour and a half if I have a guest. Now, I'm not complaining. I love this show. And soon we'll be starting our 5th year. Whenever I look at the podcast statistics, which isn't very often, I'm amazed at the fact that these episodes have been downloaded over 250,000 times. And perhaps for good reason. There are some amazing interviews of near-miss survivors. In the last episode, I highlighted a listing in the show notes of some of the most popular interviews. You may want to go back and give that episode a listen. Okay, enough of the pre-show stuff. Roll that podcast intro. Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Captain Jimmy Troy from Anderson Fire Department. You're listening to SA Matters radio show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello and welcome to episode 194 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. Did you know that I've been sharing the message of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making in live program events for 12 years now, and have trained just over 62,000 students, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, aviation workers, and more. Really, this message is for anyone who works in an environment that is high risk and high consequence. I am dedicated to improving your safety and your survival, and sharing a message to help you accomplish the most important goal of all, to go home to the ones who love you. And speaking of sharing the message, today I'm coming to you again from Syncrude, Canada, an oil refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta, where I'm working to help their operators improve high-risk decision-making. This is a big facility, sitting on 36 square miles. And this is one big project. So you're probably going to hear me delivering more than a few episodes from here throughout 2018. I want to thank Syncrude Canada and ExxonMobil for the opportunity to work with your employees to improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. Oh, and I'm also working on helping them to develop a virtual reality simulator. Get this, they want to make sure that their virtual reality simulator includes critical components of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making. I say that because of how many poorly developed simulators I have seen, especially for first responders. ExxonMobil is doing it right. In case you missed episode 192, you might want to swing back and give it a listen. I interviewed DuPont Fire Chief Larry Creekmore. Larry was the third in unit to the Amtrak train derailment in Washington State on December 18. I happened to be in Seattle the day after that tragedy occurred to deliver a program for the Buckley Fire Department. And the Buckley Fire Chief, Alan Predmore, was part of the incident management team response, and he arranged the interview. There's some really interesting perspectives there on responding to large-scale incidents. So you might want to swing back to episode 192. One of the questions I get asked a lot by readers of my blog and listeners to the podcast are, when are you coming to my area, or where are you going to be next? Great questions, and I've made it really easy to get the answer. I've created a link on my homepage of my website of all the upcoming events. So if you just go to samatters.com and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage, you'll be able to see all the upcoming events for live programs. Here's something else you might want to know. If you want to save some money hosting a program, then you might want to host a companion program. Companion programs are programs I do on adjoining days to other programs that I already have scheduled. So if you see I'm delivering a program within a couple hours of your department and you would like to tag along as a companion, contact me. And you can save as much as 20% off the program costs by being a companion to an existing program. Today's episode is a real treat, as I am interviewed by crisis and survival expert Christo Motz from the Netherlands. He's doing an article for an upcoming issue of Crisis Response Journal. And as Christo will note at the start of the interview, he and I met while I was doing a program at the Dutch Fire Academy in Arnhem, Netherlands. This interview was a bit long, so I had to cut it into 2 episodes. Now, I want to acknowledge we had a few internet connectivity issues that cause a couple areas where there's a little bit of difficulty in hearing what Christo was saying. So I just want you to know it's not your player. It's just part of the recording. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, part 1 of my being interviewed by Christo Motz.
We met each other recently in the Netherlands. In Arnhem at the Institute for Physical Safety Fire Academy, where you gave a talk about situational awareness for a group of fire commanders, police officers, and military people. And that's such an important topic nowadays, and it has always been, of course. But you're one of the persons throughout the US who has been addressing this topic and this part of skills. And so therefore I want to interview you about this specific topic. I've been a volunteer fireman myself in the Rotterdam-Rijnmond region in the west part of the Netherlands. And I do train and advise fire officers and fire crews in situational awareness as well, and also in complex training situations. Mm-hmm. So, yes, and to get to know, because I'm international consultant, survival and self-reliance, resilience. I also collaborate with a UK-based crisis response journal, mainly focused community resilience and survival.
Okay.
So I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Regarding this. Can you tell me briefly about your professional career, being a highly respected U.S. fire commander?
Well, my experience is 30 years as a first responder, and I've served, I think, in just about every possible role that a firefighter can serve. Firefighter, EMT, paramedic, lieutenant, captain, training officer, assistant chief, and fire chief. And my fire chief experience is 22 years as a fire chief. And I've worked in 3 different response organizations. And about 5 years before retirement, I went back to school and did some research on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making as part of a ambition to acquire a PhD. And in that process, my research was on first responder situational awareness and making those high-risk decisions. And I uncovered some things that the first responder community has found some value in. And now I'm retired. I'm retired now, and I just travel and share that message with mostly first responders, but some military, some aviation, some in medicine, some in industry, and that's what got you and I together on my trip to the Netherlands. Is that I was there sharing that message, and you and I met up, and that's how all this all came about.
Yeah, true. And why this topic? Why this set of skills and this mindset has become so important?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, for the longest time in my career, I had studied casualty reports, near-miss reports, injury reports, fatality reports, and I found myself over the course of time becoming quite frustrated as I would read these, because it seemed like those who were operating in those emergency situations and those who were in charge of those emergency situations, for some reason, couldn't see the bad things coming in time to avoid a bad outcome. Or if they did see the bad things coming, they seemingly didn't do anything about it to alter their course or their direction, and the bad outcome occurred anyhow. And I would see this happen over and over and over again, and I just could never bring sense to it as to how these really smart, talented, trained professionals could not see what seemed to be an obviously bad outcome on its way, and then at least get people out of harm's way. So that's what inspired me to do that research, because everything that I was reading, I couldn't come to a good conclusion or a good answer. So I thought maybe there's something more there. And then that introduced me to neuroscience, and in the research of neuroscience, the answers started to come to me rather clearly. And the dots all connected, and I had that light bulb come on over my head, and I went, now I understand. And the things that I was learning in that process were not things that I had been learning any time in my career. And I kind of felt a little embarrassed about that, and maybe even a little frustrated that I had to be 25 years into my career before I started learning this stuff for the first time. And I remember saying to myself, wow, how much more valuable this would have been if I knew this stuff 20 years ago instead of now at the sunset of my career.
Yes.
So that was the inspiration to try to just understand how they couldn't see those things occurring, and try to get some understanding to it, and then some recommendations, that would help commanders and officers and decision makers be better at it in the moment.
And does that mean, Rich, that you experienced this and you figured out and you realize it's really important, why do I not get any information? But it seems to me that the response to your talks are really very and are responded in a very positive way. What does that mean to you? What does it say to you?
What it says to me, Christo, is that the people who are in my audience are in the very same position that I was in before I started down the pathway of this research. That they didn't know what they don't know what I'm about to teach them, And I didn't either, so I was in the same kind of seat that they were in before I started down this journey. If I would have been the one sitting in the room as somebody else was teaching what I'm now teaching, I would have been amazed to be learning that stuff for the first time. And I can see it in their faces. I can see it in their eyes. I can see their worry, their concern, their excitement to be able to have these dots connect for them as they did for me is very exciting, because I know when they leave that room and they go back out into that environment where they're going to be making those high-risk decisions, they're smarter and they're better prepared. And for me, that is so exciting, so fulfilling for me to know that I've given them knowledge and skill sets that when they leave, that not only will they make better decisions, but I hope that they'll be safer and go home to their families, which is ultimately the goal for all of us.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. And when you look at their eyes and when you respond, when you feel this so can you describe that a little bit more? I mean, what does it tell you?
Yeah, what it tells me is that I'm reaching them on the deepest and perhaps most emotional core of their thoughts. And I think that it's if you interviewed somebody, say, before they come to my program, and you interviewed them about their situational awareness, their decision-making processes, I would think that most of them would think that if they've been around for a while and have some experience, that they're pretty good about it and they're pretty smart about it. And then if you interviewed them when they left my program, I think you'd hear them say, I didn't even know what I didn't know. I can't believe that this knowledge is not something that I knew before. And I really feel like the way that I present and the examples that I use really get to them at a core emotional level. And when you can reach somebody there, that what you're sharing is going to be meaningful to them and they're going to remember it. And that, I love being in front of people and watching their responses to my material. Sometimes I do this by webinar. You and I are on a you're in the Netherlands right now. I'm in the U.S. We're talking back and forth on an audio recording, and I can't see you and you can't see me. And I do some of these webinar type things where you can't see someone and you really don't know how they're reacting, how they're responding when you're just, talking into a camera, so to speak. But when you have them live and you just see, you either see the anxiety or you see the excitement of when the lessons pop to them, and how many times experienced commanders come up to me after the program and will say to me, wow, I wish I'd have had this 20 years ago, instead of now. I really wish I would have been better and smarter throughout my whole career if I would have known this stuff then. And one of the most exciting things for me is when I get somebody who's on the front end of their career who comes to my programs. And oftentimes, I don't know why, but oftentimes my programs are populated with the people who've been around for 15 or 20 or 25 years or maybe even 30 years. And I don't mind that. Yes. I always look around the room and I say, where are those people that have only been on for a year or two or three? This stuff's as important to them, maybe even more so, because they got a whole career ahead of them. But they're either not invited or they don't think that it's something they need to know yet, that they're still too early in their learning to to learn this stuff, but they're not. I mean, I really wish this topic would be part of the front end training that every responder gets. Welcome. Here's your uniform, and here's this topic, and they'd sit down and they'd attend a 2 to 3 hour session on it. I truly believe they'd look at everything they do a little differently if they knew this stuff on the front end.
Yes, I will continue with that in a moment. And before I ask you what situational awareness mean to you, what is it exactly about?
Yeah. The situational awareness, as I teach it, different people teach it different ways, and I acknowledge that. And I'm not here to say one way is right, one way is wrong. Different people just have different ways. Just as you think about it, any topic in emergency response, there are different ways of teaching the same thing, and different people have their different styles. And so I'll share with you situational awareness in the format by which I teach it, and I teach it truly from the perspective of neurologically what is happening that matters in the formation of awareness. But I do that, as you know, because you've been together, I do that in a friendly way. I'm not trying to, get fancy with concepts and terms and things with people. I try to just make it really easy to understand. So here's my really easy to understand definition of situational awareness. Situational awareness is the ability for an individual to perceive and understand what is happening in the environment around them in the context of how time is passing. Because as time passes, conditions change, and as conditions change, so does awareness. So just swing that back, the ability to perceive and understand what is happening around you in the context of how time is passing, and then hopefully be able to predict the outcomes of future events in time to prevent a bad outcome. And in that definition, there are 3 key words: perceive, understand, and predict. And when I'm teaching a class, after I share the definition, then it takes me almost 2 hours just to help the attendees understand how it is that they perceive and understand and predict. Because once you understand that process, then it's much easier to understand how things can go wrong for you when you know what's happening, kind of inside the mind that allows you to develop your situational awareness. It's much easier to understand how it goes wrong when you understand how it goes right. The example I would use, Christo, is that if a person who doesn't understand how what makes their car run, they get behind the wheel, they turn the key, and nothing happens. I mean, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not a sound, nothing. They turn the key, nothing happens. Somebody who doesn't understand how their car works might think, oh my goodness, my motor's broken. Or they might think, oh my goodness, I must be out of gas. But if you turn the key over and the motor doesn't start, there's a really high probability that's a problem with the battery. Because it's the battery that starts the cranking that makes the motor start. But if a person doesn't understand that it all starts with the battery doing its job, then when they turn the key over and it does nothing, they don't understand that the problem is probably with the battery, because they don't have that level of understanding of what's going on under the hood. So my program's helping to understand what's going on under the hood, which is in the head.
So you mentioned some things about that you could see in the faces of individual firemen, fire officers, that you could see it. And what about the feeling? What about the awareness? I mean, what about the senses?
Well, the situational awareness is rooted in the senses. You got 5 senses: seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, always on, always gathering information. And it's that, the start of situational awareness, that perception part, is the point where the five senses are engaged, gathering information and sending that information into the brain. So, in the simplest form, if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, it's probably pretty hard to have situational awareness if your guard is down, or you're not being vigilant enough to realize that you're in a dangerous situation, and therefore not really paying attention to those things that are going on around you. Then by definition, you're going to have some problems with your situational awareness, because your perception is lowered when your vigilance is down. So maintaining that level of being on guard in risky environments is pretty keen to the whole concept. That's where it all begins.
And very often, when you get a call and you go to a certain situation, you don't know in advance how it's going to look like or what it will be like. It can be very different than what the dispatch has just mentioned. So if let's put it simply, if your senses, like your visual senses, the hearing, what else, is not giving you the right information, but your gut feeling tells you not to trust the situation, how does that relate to situational awareness?
Yeah. Well, before we get to that direct question, let me back up to something that you said earlier in this statement that I want to spend a moment on. You said that sometimes the information that dispatch gives us when we're going to a call may not be completely accurate. And that's completely understandable, because a dispatcher also has situational awareness. And a dispatcher's situational awareness is created by whatever the caller tells them the emergency is. So if the caller gives dispatch good information, then the dispatcher has good situational awareness, which they then try to give to us over the radio. And that concept of one person trying to develop a similar understanding in the mind of another person is called shared awareness. So that's what the dispatcher is trying to do, is share. Well, let's actually back it up. That's what the caller is trying to do, is share their awareness with the dispatcher, which then forms an understanding in the dispatcher's mind. Okay, this is the problem. Then they key the radio and they tell us what we're going to, and try to share with us the same awareness that they have of what the caller gave them. Now, there's a lot of ways that can break down and go wrong. So there's a reasonable probability and expectation that a dispatcher's awareness will not be completely accurate, but they're sharing it with us perhaps as if it is accurate, and that then forms expectations in our mind. And those expectations formed in our mind before we get on the scene is what I term our pre-arrival lens. Our pre-arrival lens is our pre-arrival understanding of the problem that we're going to be dealing with when we get there, which then sets expectations up for what we should see and hear when we arrive. Now, the expectations can be good or bad, and let me explain that. Expectations that we have before we get there can be good because it can keep us from being surprised or caught off guard, or saying, "Oh my goodness, I didn't expect this," and then being kind of in a state of panic because what we thought we were going to is not the case. So those expectations can help us in that respect, but those expectations can also be harmful, because once we get it in our mind of what we're going to see and hear when we get there, told to us by dispatch, we may arrive and only see and hear what we expect to see and hear. And if something's going on that we didn't expect that we would see or hear, our brain can literally filter those unexpected things out of our awareness, and we will then later on say, that wasn't happening. Yeah, it was. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was. Look, here's a video. Oh my goodness, that was happening? I didn't even see that. or that was said, I didn't even hear it, but it was on the audio tape, because the brain can filter away those unexpected pieces of information. So we have to kind of be guarded with the quality of information being shared with us by dispatch, and not get of the belief that it is absolute and accurate. We should maintain a sense of doubt about that information, so that we don't come into an incident saying to ourselves, I already know what's going on here. I already know what the problem is. Dispatch already told me, so I know what I'm going to do when I get there. Well, that can be dangerous, because it can really flaw your awareness quickly. And so with that said, if you'll refresh me again on what the question was at the end of that statement, then I'll address that. But I didn't want to you brought up a really good point, and I didn't want to let that slide by.
Of course, it's very interesting and very important. No, what I also address is this, that you have to focus on your senses, of course, because they are part of our system. Yeah. But in case you cannot trust your senses, or you maybe not even know problems which are going on, but your gut feeling tells you suddenly, out of the blue, this is not right. How would you relate that to this situational awareness?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question.
This is very difficult to.
So let me explain the gut feeling, because there are people who, including me, who did not know the origins of the gut feeling. And when you don't know the origins of the gut feeling, it becomes very easy to distrust that feeling, and to set it aside and say, I'm going with what I know I should be doing, not what my gut is trying to tell me that I should be doing or not doing. So when you're let me just kind of swing back to the beginning of the process. Perception is the inputs from the five senses. Those inputs come into those five senses. They get turned into electricity and set down highways inside the brain to a destination where that information is all going to get assembled. So the simple way I like to describe this, Christo, is just think of it as your five senses are gathering up pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And as they send those jigsaw puzzle pieces into the brain, they go to this destination where the puzzle pieces get assembled together. And that's the understanding part of situational awareness, the assembly of the jigsaw puzzle. And when the jigsaw puzzle gets all assembled together, then what the brain does is takes that jigsaw puzzle and equivalently does a snapshot or a screenshot of it and sends it up into long-term memory to do a file search to say, have I ever seen this problem before? What it's doing is it's tapping into your memory to say, what have I learned before about this? What do I know I'm supposed to do based on my past training and my past experiences? So it's searching through your memory bank to try to see where the solution lays. Now, the challenge with that is that about 95% of everything we've ever learned in life, be it from experience or from classes, about 95% of that knowledge is outside of our conscious awareness. In other words, if I said, Christo, what's your email address? Boom, you'd know it. There it is. There's your email address. If I said, Christo, what is the name? What is the name of everybody that you were in school with when you were in the third grade? You might remember one name or two names. Now, when you were in third grade, you knew everybody's name. So you think you have long since forgotten the names of all those classmates. Well, you haven't forgotten them. They're in there. You just can't readily access that knowledge of their names. So 95% of everything you've learned in life, including the names of most of your third grade classmates, are entirely outside of your awareness, leaving this tiny little wedge of 5% of information that is within your ready recall, like your email address, your home address, the names of your closest friends, and everything that you can right now off the top of your head consciously recall is about 5% of all the knowledge stored in your head. So when the snapshot goes up and it does the file search of past experiences and calls and training and all of that, it's searching both databases, the 95% database and the 5% database. If it finds a match that is part of the 95% database that's outside of your conscious awareness, that's what triggers intuition. Now, intuition can come to us in essentially one of four predominant ways. One, if you get an intuitive feeling about something, you might have the hair stand up on the back of your neck, not really knowing why, but all of a sudden, you kind of get this goosebumpily hair on the back of your neck kind of thing, like putting you on a sense of alertness. That's a form of intuition. You could also have little voices inside of your head talk to you. We all have an internal voice that talks to us, and we kind of talk to ourselves silently, and that voice might be trying to warn us or alert us. You can also have an impending feeling of doom, that sense or feeling that your existence on this planet is about to be cut short quickly. And then you can also have a gut feeling. So the gut feeling is one of four predominant ways that we can sense intuition. And that gut feeling is a biological connection between the emotional control center of the brain, which sends nerve impulses down to the abdomen. So when that emotional control center of the brain gets a signal that a match has been found outside of your conscious awareness that is trying to warn you for the potential that something bad can happen, that emotional control center can send those messages down those nerve impulses, squeeze up those muscles and nerves in the abdomen, giving you that gut feeling. But a lot of people who get that gut feeling, they don't know why they got it, so they don't trust it. I've had people say, I had a gut feeling and I just thought it was indigestion. I just thought it was something I ate for lunch that wasn't sitting right. I didn't realize it was, trying to warn me and alert me. And because they don't know how intuition is formed, they tend to trust that little 5% wedge of knowledge and completely ignore the 95% wedge of knowledge, which is much more larger and a more powerful database. We just think we don't think about the knowledge that's up there that we don't have any recall of. We think we've forgotten it. Well, we haven't forgotten it. We just don't have ready access to it. So depending on that gut feel, depending on that intuition, can be a very powerful database of knowledge that could save our lives.
Yeah. Having said that, Rich, how could a fireman, a police, a military, or EMS, how could they develop this specific understanding of their own system?
Yeah. Well, if they, Christo, I think most responders probably don't have a passionate interest in knowing what's going on inside of their brain. Just like most people who drive a car don't have a passionate interest to learn how the motor actually works. They just want to turn the key and know that it starts. And when it doesn't, then they'll take it to the shop or, have somebody who has much more interest in it help them get it fixed. But if somebody had that interest, then they could immerse themselves in the lessons of what those who have passionately studied it have learned and are willing to share. Those people like you who have that passion about how, not just explaining why things happen, but how things happen, and helping people to develop a greater understanding of what is happening, gives them a skill set as to how to better maneuver through a problem when it does happen. My website's full of resources that responders could use. And, I'm not here to plug my own stuff, but I've written some books on it that could help them as well. And they don't have to just use my resources. There are there's a big database of knowledge out there on the internet. Just be careful that if you're going to go to the internet and do a Google search, just make sure that what you're searching is rooted in science and not just someone's opinion, that they've actually, that they do know what they're talking about, because there's a lot of people who would maybe proclaim things that they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So, just a word of caution there. But I think there is ways for them to learn more about how intuition can benefit them. Now, as far as how to give them more ready access to knowledge that could save their life in the moment, how do they do that? In other words, how do they build a more robust database that could trigger intuition, that could give them a gut feeling when they need to have it? You can preload your experiences. You don't have to live long enough to make every mistake in life. Just you think about how many ways of doing things right and wrong we've learned from other people, not from having made the mistake ourselves. And the same thing for emergency responders is if we immerse ourselves in the lessons of our industry, in other words, perhaps become a student of near-miss events and students of casualty events, and read them and internalize the lessons from an incident that happened to someone else, our brain stores those experiences just the same. It becomes part of that database that is searched when we're in a high-risk situation, and then we could benefit from an intuitive gut feel response, not based on something that has happened to us, but based on an article or a video that we watched 9 years ago. And we have no recall of that consciously whatsoever. But because we stored that knowledge, the brain can tap it and give us that intuitive response that says, this is not a safe situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the reason why I asked you, I run courses for the Dutch Fire Academy, especially this tactical breathing related to situational awareness. Then fire officers ask me, okay, how can we get access to our intuition? How can we develop our intuition? How can we let it work or make it work? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. One of the problems is they might be asking you to do something that can't be done consciously. In other words, if you were to say to me, Rich, please tell me, how can I right at this moment while we're on this conversation, what could I do to remember the names of everybody that I was in third grade with, however 20, 30, 40 years ago? How can I remember? What can I do to be better at that? And the fact of the matter is, when that information goes from that conscious awareness, that 5%, into that subconscious awareness, 95%, there really isn't any way to consciously call that information out of that 95% database. Where the way that information comes to us is in the form of intuition. It doesn't come to us in conscious recall. Now, there is an exception to that, Christo, and I need to acknowledge that. So you and I get off of this conversation, and then next week you're somewhere and something happens, something is said, some sound, some smell, something, and all of a sudden, boom, you remember somebody's name from third grade. Just out of the blue, just out of nowhere, it comes flooding into your memory, this recall of an event that happened when you were in third grade, and there you are mentally seeing yourself next to one of your classmates, so now you remember their name, and it just kind of comes flooding back into consciousness where it was previously, just an hour earlier, way back somewhere deep in the subconscious. So when those little events like that happen, we call those flash bulb moments. Something that happens that just makes a flash bulb memory seemingly come out of nowhere. And you might think, oh my goodness, I haven't thought about that situation or that person and decades. And all of a sudden, it's back into your memory. And then as quickly as it comes, it might go away and never come back out again for the rest of your life, or until you have another flashbulb event that triggers some ready recall. So really the best way for somebody to develop their intuition is to preload their learning with lessons that could save their lives. Just be a constant student, always learning, especially from those events that happen to other people. I mean, we're obviously going to learn from the ones that happen to us, and those ones might stay in our consciousness for a long time. And some of them may just be tucked away into the subconscious. You know, as some responders, they can tell me vividly about certain calls that they've been on. And then I'll say, well, tell me about the call you're on the day before that call. And they're like, I have no memory of the day before that particular event. Yeah. And, but that day before event also, you know, stores in memory too. So the more a responder can preload experiences, and of course they load them with their own training, they load it with their own experiences that they have on the job, but they can load so many more experiences by learning from others and those things that have gone right and wrong from other people, and just constantly being inquisitive and having a learning mindset is so helpful, because what you're doing is just making that database larger and larger and larger, which in the moment can ping up some pretty valuable intuitive lessons in the moment of, you know, crisis decision making. Okay, that concludes part 1 of my interview with Christo Motz. Part 2 will be released next Tuesday, so be sure to come back and hear the rest of that interview. All right, I have a favor to ask of you. I've launched this podcast to give voice to those who have experienced near-miss events. The stories that have been featured in these podcasts have been absolutely amazing and very educational. For example, in case you missed episodes 183, 184, and 185, go back and give them a listen of the near-miss interview of the members of the St. Charles Fire Department in Missouri. It is absolutely bone-chilling. We need to get more lessons like that shared to a larger audience. So if you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, contact me by visiting the samatters.com website and clicking on the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your on-the-job near-miss event could save someone's life. That's really powerful. And what a wonderful gift it would be. If you want to share your experience, just contact me. If you're interested in attending an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop event, you can join me January 10 and 11 in Henrico County, Virginia, January 20 at BX Swan Lake, Alberta, Canada, January 21 in Penticton, Alberta, Canada, January 27 in St. Louis, Michigan, January 28 in Portage, Michigan. I had a week-long company officer development program scheduled in Evansville, Indiana for January 29 to February 2. I mentioned that in previous episodes, so I want to let you know that that's been postponed because I have jury duty. So we've moved that program out to May. So January 29 to February 2, I'll be doing my civic duty of jury duty. So you can join me on February 3rd in Swittsville, Pennsylvania, February 6th in Evans, Colorado, February 7 in Frisco, Colorado, February 12 through 15 in Missouri City, Texas, February 20 in Orlando, Florida, February 21 and 22 in Pipestem, West Virginia, and February 27 in Austin, Texas. If you want to see all the locations of the upcoming Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop events, head over to the SA Matters website and click on that blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Upcoming Events Schedule. Just know the schedule is always changing, so check back often. If you're interested in hosting a Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop event, I'm actively booking the programs now for the spring and summer of 2018. So if you think your company, agency, association, regional conference, state conference, or national conference, might want to host a program, just contact me by clicking on that Contact Us tab on the SA Matters website, and we'll get something set up for you. I have great staff, so I promise they'll make the whole process easy for you. The last time I was delivering programs in southwest Minnesota, I stopped by and visited the sponsor for this podcast show, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire is a fire truck manufacturing company that makes amazing all-poly-bodied fire apparatus, and it's changing the industry. If you haven't checked them out yet, you really need to. Go to MidwestFire.com. That's MidwestFire.com. Anyhow, while I was there, I had a chance to sit down and talk to some of their employees about what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Here, I had the chance to ask account executive Dalton Lingbeck about their Create a Spec feature. Let's listen in. All right, Dalton. So a lot of the people who attend my programs are volunteer firefighters who have full-time jobs and full-time lives and raising their kids and working second jobs and doing the fire department, and clearly their time is stretched. So how, if they had an interest in a Midwest Fire apparatus, how do they reach you, and what's the process? I mean, how difficult is this? How much time is this going to take if they want to learn more about how to build a Midwest fire truck?
Well, that's a good question. We try and make it as easy as possible because a lot of our customers, if not the majority of our customers, are volunteer firefighters, and they do have a hard time of finding time in a day to reach out to us. So if you ever go to our website and you're searching around and you really want to talk to us but you just can't get on the phone, we have a couple ways of doing this. The first part is we actually have a call request button where you can go on there, you can click on it, you can tell us when and what number to call you on at the best time. That's really easy for us to reach out at the moment you want us to, when you're best available. The second thing is we do a Create a Spec. So on our website, you can actually click a button that's called Create a Spec, and you can build the truck that you are trying to spec out. And what that does, it doesn't give you the full truck, it doesn't give you a price, but it sends us a specification in-house. So what we can do with that is we can have your information to call you with, but before that, we have a spec in hand. We can make notes. We can start developing some ideas. So when we call you, it's an efficient call. It doesn't take up a lot of your time, and it's at the right moment.
And this Create a Spec, is there like drop-down options? Like, you know, I'm guessing like when I purchased fire trucks, sometimes I didn't even know what I wanted, and sometimes I didn't even know the options of what were available. So is this kind of talk me through, you know, the different decisions that need to be made in developing a spec? Because I would guess that there are people out there that would be scratching their head saying, I'm not really sure that I know what I need or want. So how interactive is this in walking you through this?
Well, it's a page-by-page process. So we kind of start out with the size of your truck, and we go on to different options. We try to make it as simple as possible for you to get the point across. Basically what it does is, like I said, it's a page-by-page process. You choose your options. We lead you in a direction that you need to go. So it's not one big page of just a bunch of stuff that you need to choose. Okay.
But there are options listed there to be able to choose from.
Yeah, if you're not writing anything out, there are comment boxes where you can write little comments if you need to, but we give you the options, little drop-down, little check boxes.
Are you, on this Create a Spec, are you getting as specific as to say, I want this first compartment to be so many inches wide by so many inches tall by so many inches deep? Are they getting that in depth in the Create a Spec, or is it something that's just a little simpler that allows them to do kind of like a high level description of what they want in a truck?
It's a little simpler. It's more of a high level idea. When it comes to compartment sizes, that's more for engineering to figure out. But you can, like I said, in the comment boxes, there are sections where you can say, you know, I want high side compartments, I want full head compartments on this side. There's a lot of options for you to choose that.
Okay, so they go to MidwestFire.com, and then on there is a Create a Spec tab or link.
Yep, you'll see one on the top right corner, and if you scroll down the main page, you'll see one underneath our video. There's plenty of options for you to find it. It's just here to catch your eye, and when you see some trucks on our website that you like, feel free to fill one out.
Yep, there you go. Go to MidwestFire.com, check out Create a Spec, and see how easy it is to build a truck and then have a follow-up consultation about your needs. Thank you to Midwest Fire President Sarah Atchison and all your staff for your awesome commitment to improving first responder safety. I really appreciate your support of my mission. Hey, if you're not a member of the SA Matters community of learners yet, what are you waiting on? There are over 50,000 people connected here. Through my newsletter, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness and how to make better decisions under stress. How to train employees to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. If you want to sign up for the monthly newsletter, and by the way, it's free, here's how you do that. Just get out your smartphone and text SA Matters to 22828. That's the letter S as in Sam, the letter A as in Adam, and the word matters, all together, SA Matters, one word, to 22828. You'll get a message back on your phone about how to access my program handouts. That's okay. That'll sign you up for the newsletter, and you can consider getting the program handouts just a bonus for signing up. If you don't have a phone that can do that kind of texting, you can go to the website, samatters.com, and click the red box on the right side of the home page, and that'll get you signed up just the same. If you want to get connected with me on Twitter, you can follow @RichGasaway on Twitter. If you want to get connected with me on LinkedIn, you can search for Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. If you want to watch my videos, you can go to the SA Matters TV YouTube channel. That's SA Matters TV, all together, one word, on YouTube. Those videos have been downloaded over 600,000 times. So, that's really cool. And I uploaded a video for my world tour where I went to Australia and New Zealand and the Netherlands and Belgium, and that's what got me on this interview with Christo earlier. So if you want to just kind of see what that world tour looked like, you can swing by and watch that video too. You can also get connected with me on Facebook by liking the SA Matters Facebook page. Finally, if you would like to advertise your product or service on this podcast, just reach out to me. And the podcast has had over 250,000 downloads. So if you want to get your message into the ears of our listeners, then just contact me. Well, that's it. Episode 194 is complete. Thank you to my guest interviewer, Christo Motz from Crisis Response Journal, who took time away from his busy travels to interview me. Thank you to our awesome podcast sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all the companies and agencies and organizations that have hosted live training events. Thanks to all who've attended the virtual training that is now available on the website. Thanks to the more than 1,000 students enrolled in the SA Matters Online Academy. But most importantly, thank you. That's right, you, the listener of this podcast show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.